Hey everybody, welcome to Canary Cry Radio, episode number 166, How to Mint Freedom with Patrick Holland. My name is Gons. Basil will be with you in just a moment here. I know it feels weird because we're almost at episode 700 of Canary Cry News Talk, which has only been around since 2016, whereas Canary Cry Radio, which has been around since 2012, is only at episode 166. But Canary Cry Radio has always been more about approaching things from a topical point of view instead of just the news of the week. So here we are. We operate value for value. Go to canarycry.support. Learn all the ways you can support the show. We don't do advertisements. We don't do affiliate codes. We don't do any of that. We are fully produced by producers. That's listeners, people out there volunteering their time, talent, or treasure. And you can find out more about that at canarycry.support. But let's just jump right in. If you're someone who pays attention to world events, especially politics, you may feel dread and hopelessness upon absorbing the myriad of ways in which our federal leaders choose to serve themselves and the interests of lobbyists rather than the will of the people. Change is often promised but never fulfilled, or if there is change, it's usually for worse. But all hope is not lost, especially for Americans. The only caveat is that you won't find it in DC. Rather, it begins with you and your local representation. There are many people who don't get too excited about getting political. Like me, I don't get too excited about that, since the mere idea of entering into a conversation with a politician directly about an issue seems too personal and perhaps even life-threatening, depending on who you're talking to. Yet, to practice our constitutional rights would mean to make our voices heard loud and clear to those who are elected to represent us. But how and who has the time to do that? In this episode, Basil speaks with Patrick Holland from the Missouri Freedom Initiative, a, quote, clarion call for individual states to reclaim their rights for their residents using powerful tools such as, but not exclusively limited to, the 10th Amendment and anti-commandeering doctrine, end quote. In early 2023, Bill SB 100, a constitutionally grounding economic pursuit to make gold and silver coinage as legal tender, nearly crossed the finish line and became law in Missouri. But some pretty twisted Democrats got in the way and spoiled the bill by invoking disturbing levels of loyalty to government-decreed paper notices of fiat debt, and even invoking Nazis, Confederates, MAGA, and, of course, a zombie apocalypse. You'll hear all about that in this episode as part of their reasoning for killing the bill. The battle may have been lost, but the war wages on. As we enter an election year, there are many ways that you can get involved in your local community when it comes to a political thing. But even spending a few minutes a day to write an email to your local representative with some basic copy and paste info can add up over time and volume. In that sense, our local governments are somewhat of an archaic form of social media in a sense. Whatever we, the people, make trend on the desks of our representatives will get the most attention from them. And perhaps if we are able to feed them the proper information and the reasoning behind the people and what they are looking to do in any certain situation or issue, then it's easier for the representatives to actually move on the behalf of the people. In America today, we've been lulled to sleep and accept whatever terms our governments shove in our faces, whether it be local or federal. The passivity isn't just a mere product of our culture, but in fact due to the spiritual wickedness, the evil that has been growing, ever more present in this age of deceit. But it's time to rattle some representatives' cages. Can Canarians, well, mostly Americans, do what you can out there, international folks, make a difference in their local communities by not just leaning on the Constitution, but on God, who gave us the ability to understand and value our freedom and sovereignty? Let's jump into Basil having a conversation with Patrick Holland of the Missouri Freedom Initiative.
Here we are, folks. We've made it, and I'm glad you're here because with me, I have a very interesting fellow who's making some real change in this world. I know you're worried. We're all very worried about what we see happening. But contrary to popular belief, there's actually things going on, and there are ways that you can take back your power in this country. And with me, I have Patrick Holland, and he is from the Missouri Freedom Initiative. How's it going, Patrick?
Hi there, Basil. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Things are going great. How are you guys doing?
Oh, we are just working away, buddy.
Well, I've got my eyes on you, but I think you got me beat on that one.
You, just so everybody knows, Patrick here, unfazed, completely unfazed. There's always a moment when we get on with a guest and they kind of glance up at the video feed and they see giant googly eyes looking back at them. And there's at least a moment of sort of what's the word? I don't know. Hesitation, questioning their reality. Is this really happening? But
malaise, confusion,
yes. There's all sorts of words for this, and all of you certainly have felt it one time or another looking into my eyes. But Patrick, completely unfazed, a steel-faced, stoic example that no matter what surprises life throws at you, you can stand firm. So thank you for that, Patrick. Now, would you like to tell everybody a little bit about you, just so we can get kind of an idea of what kind of lunatic we're talking to?
Gotcha. Okay, well, the Missouri Freedom Initiative is kind of an interesting group because we don't have any formal registration, membership sign up. We don't take donations. It's just words that people gather around together to actually get good things done in the state of Missouri. Now, what are good things? What we're most known for was something called the Second Amendment Preservation Act. And it's a special thing here in Missouri. Many states have it, but ours actually has an enforcement mechanism. Let me explain what this is first before we get on to some newer stuff we've been doing. But like I said, this is kind of what we're famous for, so I'll throw this in first.
Okay.
Now, we didn't start the Second Amendment Preservation Act. That was done by a gentleman by the name of Ron Calzone in the state of Missouri and another guy by the name of Dave Rowland. But we came in to help out get it across the finish line legislatively. What the Second Amendment Preservation Act is basically a law in the state of Missouri that says we do not follow federal gun law. We don't follow it. It's not in our state. Now, if the Fed wants to come in and enforce it, they can, but with absolutely no help from our law enforcement, from any political subdivisions. And if they do help the feds with, enforcing their gun laws in the state of Missouri, then there's an immediate $50,000 fine and a fast track through the court system.
Ooh.
So we preserved the Second Amendment in the state of Missouri, and we have an enforcement mechanism to keep it preserved. Hence the Second Amendment Preservation Act with the enforcement mechanism. Now, there's no fanfare for this in the mainstream media.
Of course.
This has not been discussed, on NBC News and MSNBC. CNN doesn't talk about it. That's because other states want this, but they don't know how it works. They don't know really how we got it done. And many states don't even know that this exists. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah, it seems like one of those things that the powers that be would be very invested in keeping people ignorant about.
Yeah, it definitely. Now, the newest news on this is that an Obama appointed judge in the Eighth Circuit has overturned the Second Amendment Preservation Act, lovingly known as SAPA in Missouri. We love to shorten things here. And that we are currently going into the 8th District next month to talk about that. And we're going to the Supreme Court if they don't overturn their overturn, because this is a 10th Amendment action. So we're using the 10th Amendment in the state of Missouri, along with anti-commandeering doctrine, to actually secure the freedoms for the people in the state of Missouri.
Now, of course, I have all of the amendments memorized and can spout them word for word, but for somebody out there who might not yet have done their patriotic duty to study, what is the 10th Amendment?
You bet. That's basically states' rights is what we are. Anything that hasn't been, thoroughly defined in the Constitution as a right of the federal government, basically by default goes to the 9th and 10th Amendments, which is personal rights and then states' rights. So that's what the 10th Amendment is. We're using the 10th Amendment, states' rights, for the state of Missouri to claim what the founding fathers actually forever laid in stone with the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms which shall not be infringed.
Yes.
So we're reclaiming that in the state of Missouri the way the founding fathers intended it for the entire country, but we have illegal actions happening in states and in the federal government taking away people's Second Amendment rights all the time. Constant infringements, whether they be laws or regulations or executive actions.
Right.
So any way you slice it, the Second Amendment is under constant attack. It's constantly being infringed. And Missouri said, no more. We draw the line here. You can't go any further. None of your red flag laws, like, for instance, pistol braces, they're here. We never had a problem with that. We're the only state that didn't have an issue with that because of the Second Amendment Preservation Act with the enforcement mechanism.
Right.
One example. But Joe Biden has been threatening to outlaw or ban AR-15s as an example. If that went through as a federal regulation, or if they created a law in Congress, the state of Missouri would not follow that because we have the Second Amendment Preservation Act with an enforcement mechanism.
Incredible. Now, it's weird if somebody is sort of strictly under the mainstream influence, whether that's the news or even just culture. The very words states' rights have been sort of programmed to be some trigger words to just mean racist. You know?
Absolutely.
It's so effective, but unfortunately, fortunately, states' rights, it's the 10th Amendment. It's in the Constitution.
That's right.
Now, they will tell you that racism is in the Constitution as well, and that's part of the clever ruse that they've been able to pull over everybody's illusion of the world.
Sure. And one thing that we love to talk about in the Missouri Freedom Initiative is something we have in the Missouri Constitution, which is equal application under the law. And so the law should apply equally to everybody, no matter who you are, no matter how much money you have, what color your skin is, no matter how much money you have, period.
Yeah.
So we can actually shut down legislation in the state of Missouri as a political activist body by literally going in front of legislators and saying, hey, this bill that you guys are looking at right now that you're going to debate on the floor tomorrow, it's in violation of Article 1, Section 10, Article 1, Section 2 of the Missouri Constitution. This does not have equal application under the law. So that's one thing I would point out right away, but it'll get into the technicals later. Know your state constitution. Your state constitution is your friend. This is a guideline that you can follow if you're getting involved politically. And I'm going to give you a very good argument as to why it's a better idea to be involved politically in your state than to try and get involved on the federal level. And I can give you great arguments for that. I could take you through it step by step. But
I'm going to love it. I'm going to love it. As the listeners know, I've danced around the idea of getting involved on the local level myself recently. There's some sort of local things going on, and I have felt, and just like everybody else, have been trained to feel fairly hopeless because I, don't own some large portion of the state or whatever. But so yes, the listeners are going to be interested, and also myself personally. I need some advice. I need some guidance. And Patrick, you're the man to do it.
Hey, hopefully so. I was about to say, aren't you one of those guys buying huge tracts of farmland over the United States of America? But I accidentally confused you with Bill Gates for a second.
Yeah, right. Not as much as Bill Gates, but it's certainly part of the life plan here.
Okay, gotcha. Good. It's good to have a little bit of land you can work and do something with. But property rights is another thing that we should probably have a whole nother show on at some point.
Would love to.
Okay, and once again, this is what we're known for. It was helping to get the Second Amendment Preservation Act across the line legislatively, signed into law by the governor. And, of course, we're fighting now because the federal government says, no, you can't have that. I'm sorry, you can't have the Second Amendment in the state of Missouri the way the founding fathers intended. So we're fighting that in court right now. And not us, by the way. Our organization is not designed to deal with court issues. We deal with the legislators. We go up to Jefferson City and personally deal with senators and representatives. So that's
Right.
what we really, truly do. We do a little bit more than that, but we don't involve ourselves in the court.
And
So
it seems to be working. It seems pretty effective. I mean, I don't think it would be out of bounds to at least describe the organization or the people in it as sort of libertarian adjacent, at least. And that's always the problem with libertarians, is the idea of even organizing is sort of practically against some of the attitudes of libertarians. But I love the way you describe the organization, where it's just a bunch of people who are sort of bound by the idea that the federal government should follow the Constitution, and that regular people who care can just use the Constitution that was given to us, by the way, by sort of birthright here. We don't need a PAC, or we don't need fundraising. We don't need a lobbying group or things like that. It can just be a bunch of people who get together, who care enough, and actually affect some pretty incredible change.
you bet. And we do that on a regular basis, and we're known for that in the state of Missouri. We're very well known by our legislators and the Missouri Freedom Initiative. And we engage in an operation we call Knock and Shock.
Ooh,
And yeah, I know, sounds pretty cool.
love it.
It is cool, actually. And that's when a bunch of us get together, 30, 40 people, and we go up to the Capitol, and we literally go and stop at every legislator's office and squeeze into their offices with all of us and have a little chat.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do. That's what we're kind of famous for. But we're not just going there and having a chat. We're actually promoting legislation, giving ideas to legislators, helping them understand a Missouri point of view. And keep in mind, with 30 or 40 people, I suspect in 2024 that number is going to be twice to three times that size.
Yeah.
And we're very noticed when we go up to the Capitol. They know we're there. And so gold and silver is something we need to talk about here in a little bit, because that's our latest project. But the idea of actually getting involved in doing something in the state is something I want people to start thinking about, because when I go on socials, I see people get involved in their echo chambers, and they're stuck in their echo chambers. They can't get out, and they really do depend on positive reinforcement on everything they say in a social.
Right.
You've got to get out of that comfort zone, folks. That comfort zone is not doing anyone any good. You're not making any positive change. And your state needs you badly, really badly. And we'll explain that in a little bit here.
Right.
But,
I mean, part of you can look around on the internet, there's things like ideological capture, there's sort of algorithm, echo chamber capture, and they purposefully make it very comfortable for you in your little space, and they more or less just won't bug you about it. There's
nope.
Of course, there's little
there. They're very comfortable with you being there. Trust me.
Exactly.
They don't want you leaving that chamber and actually doing something.
Right. And there might be, some soft nudges for the purpose of, marketing or advertising or something. But more or less, the idea that you are interacting with a bunch of people who agree with you online is part of the system. It's part of the prison. And so thank you for putting that so well, because it's something I scream about all the time. But, sometimes people are so mesmerized by the googly eyes, they tune it out.
Yeah, well, they are quite mesmerizing, actually. So,
yes,
you're right. They don't move very much, though. Can you shake your head a little bit?
No, they don't.
There we go. Look at that. Yeah. Yeah, only one of them's moving, though, man.
Yeah,
sorry about that.
They're pretty damaged. They've been going for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
Okay, back to what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
Echo chambers.
Okay, so making positive change, and we'll talk about some of the things we've done. Like, for instance, you don't have to think on the state level. If that's too big, and it's thinking about federal level, that's huge and also impossible to change. We could talk about that in a little bit too. Remind me about that.
And there's this idea that federal is the one that matters.
Yes,
that other
it
stuff
doesn't.
don't matter.
It doesn't matter. Look at what we did in Missouri. We don't follow federal gun law.
I love it.
We didn't go to the Fed to do that. We did it right here in our own state using the 10th Amendment, tools left for us by the founding fathers. If the United States government got too tyrannical, you could use the 10th Amendment to start, refusing resources in your state to the federal government. And that's what anti-commandeering doctrine is all about, Madison Doctrine, Monroe Doctrine. So, okay, going to gold and silver now. Let's get into the sexy topics now. As if, your Second Amendment rights aren't sexy enough. Let's talk about gold and silver.
Ooh,
Let's talk about that. Shinies, pretties.
Love it.
Okay, guys, anyone who's watching this today should understand that we have hard times ahead of us. The dollar is actually being inflated. Some would say hyperinflated. I don't think we're quite there yet. We'll know it when we see it. Mm-hmm. And the government wants to, and the Federal Reserve wants to put us on something called the digital dollar.
Yes.
Now, the digital dollar comes with it an enormous amount of tyranny. That comes with digital wallets, facial IDs, social credit scoring, ESG, and if you don't agree with the government, I'm sorry, your car won't start anymore.
Yeah, and programmable as well. Programmable money. They can control where and when and what you spend it on.
Correct. So if you've been a bad boy, Basil, and if you were critical of the government for something, and you go to the grocery store to go buy a couple of steaks for you and your wife to have for dinner tonight, they may think, gosh darn it, Basil, you can't have those steaks tonight.
Your
you can't
carbon
have beef.
footprint is too big. That's why they call me the bad boy of podcasting.
That's right. So, think beyond that. Think not being able to start your car in the morning. Think about actually a camera like this one right here, looking at your face as you go into a storefront, but they won't let you in the store because your social credit score is too low to be able to go inside that store. That's what they're doing in China right now. It's actually happening. It's been reported.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not making stuff up here.
No. Our people are very familiar. We are one of those podcasts that started talking about CBDCs and social credit scores back in 2016, back when it was still a conspiracy theory.
Yep, that's right. And I got to tell you, gang, this kind of tyranny that's coming down the pike is unfortunately going to become a reality. It's just a matter of time. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's happening. They're putting all kinds of infrastructure into place right now. In fact, we just fought something here in the state of Missouri. Before we get to the sexy topic of gold and silver, let me share one more thing with you.
Yes.
In the state of Missouri, we have a House Speaker. We're talking about Missouri politics here, not federal stuff. A House Speaker by the name of Dean Plocher. And Dean Plocher is an interesting fellow. Very interesting fellow. He's got a lot of power. In fact, I think his power extends beyond the state of Missouri, but I think we'll cover that another time.
Yeah, well, he was the guy. Didn't he take some trips over to Israel recently? Was
exactly 1 year ago in the summer? That's correct. Yeah, he did take a trip to Israel. He took the governor of Missouri along with him for cover. And while the governor of Missouri was enjoying all kinds of tours around Israel, he was jet setting around Europe making business deals. And, of course, that was paid for by the Heritage Group, and that's another story. But we'll get into that another time. Actually, we should probably consider very strongly doing that in the next month or so. But, okay, so Dean Plocher tried, the operative word, tried to get ESG compliant software shoved into the Missouri House of Representatives. The name of the software was called Fireside. And Fireside was an AI database that was ESG compliant. They tried to do it during a governor's veto session. So let me explain what that means. Let me set this up. We have a normal legislative season that starts shortly after the new year, say January 3rd, 4th, 5th, something like that. And it usually ends right around the middle of May. So we have a fairly long legislative season, which is 4.5 months, up to 5 months. And then the rest of the year, they're not working. So we have a part-time legislator. They have regular jobs, and then they are also representatives and senators. So what happened was Dean Plocher tried to get this software shoved through with absolutely no legislative oversight, really, during a governor's veto session, not during the normal legislative session, with no appropriations bills to go with it. It's $800,000. And basically, that software is AI capable for a database. That's a pretty scary. We could spend an hour on that. Why we should stay away from AI capable databases. All right.
Okay.
Because
yeah, right.
databases are fine the way they are. We don't need artificial intelligence governing databases. But at the same time, ESG compliant, which means basically the software could plug into social credit scoring. Not only
it's sort
that,
of turnkey. It's part of that turnkey totalitarianism.
Yes, you're right. And this kind of stuff is going into your state. I mean, when's the last time, and I'm speaking, basically to anyone who's watching, when's the last time you called up your representative or your senator and asked them what kind of constituency management software they're using? Make sure it's not Fireside. I mean, we found out. We went to work immediately. The grassroots in Missouri went to work to shut down that operation, and we had very precious little time to do it. And how much time is that, Basil, you may ask? In fact, I think I did hear you ask. How much time did you have, Pat? 36 hours.
Oh, my God.
We had 36 hours to shut down the operation.
Wow.
And we did it. So that software is not in our state. And it was a sure thing 36 hours before they had a hearing on it.
That's
a sure thing.
That's a high pressure situation, my friend. I mean, a lot of people, we kind of think of government moving as very slow. We think it's, we're kind of taught that the amount of bureaucracy means really nothing ever gets done. It's sort of a very popular, sort of colloquial idea, especially for people who are kind of into following things, and the idea that, the government is kind of dysfunctional, it's kind of slow, it's kind of nothing. Some people like it that way. Some people think it needs, AI to help it speed up. But there are these situations. I'm rewatching House of Cards right now, and of course they put their...
that's kind of rude, man. You're supposed to be interviewing me right now.
Yeah.
So, I knew you had virtual goggles on for something. I didn't realize it was
no,
House of
I'm
Cards,
caught. Man. You caught me.
Kevin Spacey, jeez.
I know. It's weird watching it now that Kevin Spacey has been revealed to be what he is.
Yeah.
But, okay, so we have this idea that things move slowly. But in reality, there are these moments where it is a do or die right now. You've got a number of hours, and if you don't do it, the history of your state changes forever.
That's right.
Incredible.
Yep. And so it was a 36-hour operation. All the grassroots, all the conservative grassroots, we joined together and actually made it happen. And I can explain how, but basically there was a video made with another group called Rogue Politics and myself, and that was passed out basically to everyone we knew in the network that could make sure that it got in front of every legislator within 10 to 15 minutes of them receiving it.
Wow.
So that's the kind of, grassroots can be very, very effective when you guys, when all the egos are dropped and we realize there's a massive threat and we need to take care of business right away, we can really get things done, or at least we can shut things down. Getting something going is harder. It's easier actually to shut down bad stuff than it is to get good stuff across the finish line, by the way, if you've never been in a grassroots organization. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we had to, basically defeat Dean Plocker again. And this guy's been caught up in 3 scandals this year. Our House Speaker, a representative, Dean Plocker, District 89, for those who are paying attention, has been caught up in 3 scandals. And the Ethics Committee, which he personally handpicked all the members of, has found nothing wrong so far. They've met 2-3 times about the guy already. And so they have nothing to report.
Of course.
So at any rate, so we do have problems in the state of Missouri, but we're working on them and we're exposing corruption. That's another big thing, because Missouri is going to become a bastion of freedom, especially when gold and silver legislation gets done, and we'll go into that in a bit. But I want to talk a little bit about how things, first of all, with grassroots organizations. Trust me, gang, we're getting to gold and silver in a second. When it comes to grassroots, and organizations. you always want to look at several things, but one of the things you want to look at is, are they asking you for money? If they're asking for money and they're asking for money to do, to look after your freedoms, like, the NRA.
Yeah.
If I give the NRA $50, $75 a year, I don't have to worry about my Second Amendment rights anymore, right? Isn't that right, Basil? Is that kind of how they...
That's the idea. That's democracy for you.
Yeah, and it's not working out too well. The NRA has failed. I'm glad they're taking all the arrows right now, for all the other Second Amendment groups, but the NRA is a failure. So basically, Second Amendment Preservation Act, I could even go into Wall Street Silver, which I was there in the beginning of it. It's kind of a sordid story. I don't want to go into too many details, but the idea of Wall Street Silver was great, but it turned bad. But there's a good side to it. There's silver lining to every cloud, right?
Sure.
And now we have the Silver Degen Club, which is coming out of that. Actually a grassroots organization to, promote the idea, of gold and silver as money, and also to stop the manipulation of gold and silver. And I just did an interview with the Silver Degen Club yesterday. And so we have good things coming out of what became Wall Street Silver, which was nothing more than a penny stock pump and dump is what Wall Street Silver became.
Oh, gosh.
So there's good grassroots out there and there's bad grassroots out there. I just want folks to know that we don't take any money whatsoever. What we do is we request that you give some of your time to join us up in Jefferson City, or to make phone calls or email your senator or representative. Reasons being, now we're getting into gold and silver. Yeah, I saw your eyes got a little bit bigger there when I said gold and silver there. Okay.
Salivating over here, man.
If some of you probably may not have known that we were involved with working to get SEPA across the finish line, because they know us as the Silver and Gold Crew. In the state of Missouri, we have a senator. His name is Senator Bill Eigel. He's an amazing man. But one of his bills that he had in 2023 was called SB 100. And it did many things, but the first and foremost turned the idea, because it did not get out across the finish line. Once again, we'll talk about this. This is Dean Plocker again, folks, the same man I was just talking about that stopped this bill. But the idea is to get silver and gold as legal tender in the state of Missouri. Now, this is a grassroots function.
It doesn't sound like it should be something that anybody would really disagree with.
You would think.
Yeah.
You would think.
I'm all for
holy mackerel.
I'm all for steel manning the competition's argument, but I have a hard time steel manning the idea that gold and silver shouldn't be tender.
Yeah. It sounds awfully constitutional, doesn't it?
Uh-huh.
It sounds like Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, that nothing will be money in the United States of America except for gold and silver coin, right?
Yeah.
It does. And but so within this bill, and by the way, I got to get into some of the stories here, because we've got to have a laugh at the end of this, okay? Right. Because this bill got killed. It got all the way up to the finish line, and it was shot dead. Literally by Dean Plocker, and I'll tell you how he did it. Literally at the finish line. It wasn't allowed to cross. So the bill does several things, but another thing it did, remember we were talking about the 10th Amendment earlier?
Yes.
Okay. One thing that was really great in SB 100, this bill, and by the way, this bill was copied by other states, which was great. They found the bill, they copied, and by the way, legislation is not copyrighted. If there's a state that has a really good bill, that's on the docket there somewhere, steal it. Steal the language. Just
copy paste
good things in your state. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You can just copy paste it, huh?
That's right. You sure can. States should steal good ideas from each other, by the way, and they often do. So this bill also had a 10th Amendment component, saying there will be no confiscation of gold and silver in the state of Missouri, period. So in fact, it even gave a clause for, basically a fast tracking through the court system if it did happen to you. So once again, 10th Amendment component, but it did something else that was really neat. And that was actually give a value to gold and silver. Okay. So it was weight, purity, spot price, which is the government price, the government manipulated price, and then the premium. And so those four components make up the price of gold and silver. And
Sounds
so
logical.
yeah, it's actually quite logical, especially when you have that free market component of the premium in there. Very important. Baby. And other states were, saw all the stuff we were doing in Missouri. There was a lot more in the bill, too. We actually had an allowance to, basically start a depository of sorts.
Wow.
And, states do have depositories. Texas has one. Utah has one. Tennessee just got legislation done in 2023 to get a depository. So other states are thinking about gold and silver as well. It's not just Missouri. But it is literally the only hope for people to literally get protection from the digital dollar. There's really nothing else out there, because when they want to start taking away dollars, they can. We don't own them. Those are Federal Reserve notes.
Right.
Those are debt instruments.
Yeah, they don't actually belong to us.
They don't. Gold and silver, though, that's loyal title. So gold and silver, when you have it in your hand, it's yours. You own it. So it's the way property was supposed to be, too, but we'll do another.
Revolutionary.
Yes, it's somewhat revolutionary. Yeah. And you know what? You know what's interesting? And you might ask, and in fact, I could tell by looking in your eyes right now, you're wondering, did the banks give you a problem, Pat? Were the banks trying to shut down your bill? The answer is no.
Really?
Nope. Banks didn't have a problem with this bill. Do you know why?
I do find that surprising. Tell me why.
Because with the digital dollar, your mom and pop banks and your regional banks have no reason to exist anymore. They have no.
So it squeezes out.
Yep.
Squeezes the little guy. So the big banks
correct.
Are big fans of this.
Banks are smart. They generally have smart people in them. And the regional and mom and pop banks don't have any problem with gold and silver bills. They don't fight them because they realize with the digital dollar coming, they're gone. With gold and silver, there's a real good chance they can survive and still serve, their communities and still stay a business. So there's opportunity in that for them. So yeah, we didn't get any resistance except for Democrats. And I'm okay. And I am not doing the right left paradigm thing here, because I told you we got killed. Literally, Plocker killed this. Dean Plocker killed this when we're at the finish line. And believe me, it is hard to get a bill to the finish line in the state of Missouri. Why? Because they file like 3,000 of them a year, and only about 120 of them get to the finish line. And most of those are appropriations and the budget. So
got it.
Let me tell you what happened. And this is immortalized because I actually created a video, and it's out. And actually, YouTube took it off our channel. So it's on Rumble, I believe. And it is the actual House hearing on gold and silver.
Oh,
and
wow.
it because we have cameras and we have audio in the Missouri House. And we got treated to Democrats regaling us of their concerns of Nazi gold making it into the state of Missouri.
What?
Oh, yeah. They're very concerned about that. But not just Nazi gold. You see, your eyes are getting bigger. Confederate gold. They're very concerned about that as well.
What in
about
the world?
Confederate gold going in circulation in Missouri. But it gets better. MAGA gold. They were worried about MAGA gold making it into circulation in Missouri.
What does that even mean? That's so bizarre.
We're not sure yet. I have a team of scientists working on it right now.
This is trying to address the Nazi coins.
It could.
It could. Could, if it was official Nazi coins, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
So foreign coinage or on the behalf of a foreign government.
Foreign coinage. Okay, what about private coinage?
I'm not sure on that.
Yeah, it probably doesn't address that, right? What about Confederate coinage? Would address that?
So if it's considered a foreign government, yes.
Would it be considered a foreign government?
Yes.
It would. Okay, I like that answer. I don't know if that's true since it's domestic in that it's here, but I think that you're right. What about coinage like commemorative coins? Like I saw an ad recently for Donald Trump commemorative coins that were gold coins. Would those be accepted by the Department of Revenue?
I don't believe that this addresses that. We're talking about foreign coinage.
So it doesn't address it. So we would still have a problem where Donald Trump, or if Joe Biden had gold coins that were commemorative coins for his inauguration. You might have more of a problem with that, so maybe I'll stay away from the orange man. Those coins would still be accepted, and our departments of revenue offices, our fee offices, the private businesses would have to accept them because they are gold coins, and they would have to figure out how to value them, right?
It could.
Okay. Well, I think this amendment is a step in the right direction, gentlemen, because at least you're saying no Nazi gold. But I think we still have some other problems here.
But there was one more. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
You look ready. Zombie apocalypse silver.
What?
And they said this on the House floor,
Wait.
in front of cameras, in front of the public.
A guy in a suit.
The reasons why they said we should never let gold and silver in Missouri. Nazi gold could make its way into Missouri. Confederate gold could make its way into Missouri. MAGA gold and zombie apocalypse silver. And they did this straight-faced on the floor of the House in the state of Missouri while we were literally at the finish line.
Gold has never been worth zero. As far as I'm
If we
aware,
were in a zombie apocalypse, gentlemen, just serious question here. I'm not like, which would be more valuable, gold or maybe oil or food?
So, gentlemen, I stand by what I said, and I've already suggested to you I feel that I am not in a good position to predict the future.
I'm trying to understand
Never
why
been worth
gold
zero.
has intrinsic value, as opposed to gold has the value that the market is willing to pay for it.
And so Peter Meredith did that. I can't remember all the names of the Democrats. There was one oh, by the way, here's one thing you didn't get to see in that video, was the huge line of conservatives that were waving white papers in the air, standing up next to a microphone, waiting for the floor leader to recognize them so they could speak to the bill. SB 100, Missouri Silver and Gold Bill, as legal tender. They weren't allowed to speak. Now, one conservative did get to speak, but all the rest of them were Democrats, and they were given like 10, 15 minutes each. It was terrible. So that's the treatment we got because of Dean Plocker. So we recognize that, and I've talked to a lot of people in the House. They recognize that Dean Plocker killed the bill. He single-handedly decided for 6 million people that we weren't going to have gold and silver. And the reason why is because the Senate, at the very same time that was going on in the House, the Senate was looking at Dean Plocker's corporatist bill known as sports betting. And there was a lot of senators that were, opposed to the sports betting bill. So they filibustered. So that's the reason why Dean wouldn't let gold and silver across, is because he wouldn't let a grassroots bill across because his corporatist bill wasn't being allowed across in the Senate.
We're trying to make sure we're not in conflict with the United States Constitution. Again, as I mentioned, Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution says that no state shall, it actually says a lot of things, right? Enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters, so on and so forth, coin money, can't do that, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. Okay. And so we're just trying to mirror that language, lady, that, of course, goes back a couple of hundred years now.
Okay, another question for
and
you.
Other states have done this, I might mention to you, a number of states. And so, that's perhaps some comfort hopefully would be gained in that we're not...
I don't have a lot of comfort in that.
...creating the wheel here.
Gentlemen, would you be able to use Nazi gold coins as currency in the state of Missouri?
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Would you be able, if this legislation were to pass, would someone be able to walk into one of our state offices and pay a state debt using Nazi gold coins?
So the legislation says gold and silver coinage. So again, I think that this could probably promulgated and greater clarity could be given if necessary. And I mean, I think that it's not necessarily precludes in the language of the statute or the U.S. Constitution that specifies necessarily where the coins have to be minted.
Gentlemen, I'm going to cut you off right there. And that is incredibly troubling to me. If we're going to actually seriously try to vet a piece of legislation, honestly, this is one of the most poorly thought out pieces of legislation that has come before this body.
And I actually looked into that because I didn't realize, I was like, oh my God, Democrats knew something more about gold and silver than I did. And so I actually looked it up to find out that Nazis coined absolutely no gold or silver. They did plunder. They took gold and silver, but they sent most of it to Switzerland, basically to their own personal accounts, held there. And they didn't really circulate it. They were doing Deutschmarks.
So, it's, of course, for those who are paying attention, you already know this. I mean, a lot of politics is performance and theatrics. Sometimes just saying something to fill the time or just to, check off a box that something was said. But I mean, you're talking about a grade A Oscar-winning performance in the state legislature about SB 100, just grasping at the air for any reason at all to make gold and silver, or to not make gold and silver legal.
Gold has the value that the market is willing to pay for it. And comparing that to any other precious metal or any other commodity, why gold and silver? Why treat them in a unique way like legal currency, which legal currency is unique in that it has the backing of a government. That's what makes legal currency unique. Whereas gold doesn't have the backing of a government. It's just what is it worth in a market. And based on a changing marketplace, that value could change dramatically because our use of gold changes dramatically over time too, right? Like we use more aluminum now for a lot of things, or we use more copper, depending on the purpose. Why gold?
I wish that the gold was still backing the dollar, because it would have held a lot more of its value than it does today.
Gold would, or the dollar?
The dollar would, due to the fact that it's backed by gold. History would certainly indicate that. But the reason that gold and silver are unique, and again, I think it's a fair question. Somebody brought up maybe diamond or
oil
diamonds
or platinum,
rubies or any, say, a commodity.
Aluminum.
But the Constitution says that gold and silver are. And so, I think that is the
just feels like we were at a different time then. That was even pre-gold rush, right?
I haven't heard anyone explicitly say it, but I almost get the sense that some want us to be enslaved to fiat paper currencies and subjected to whatever government.
It's interesting because slavery was really much more predominant at a time when gold was the legal currency.
Yes.
So that's an interesting point to bring up.
I use the word in a different sense, but but
why should we be slaves to gold?
Government would have control of the people. They can print the money and they say what it is or it isn't. When it's attached to, again, gold, it's a limiting factor on government.
So
and
what
how
it feels
much money
like to me is that gold became the thing of intrinsic value at a time when scarcity and property ownership allowed the people who had access to the gold to hoard that gold, largely taking it from other people or taking it from the land. And then they were able to say, no, I'm the one with wealth because I'm the one that has the gold and you don't have any. And now I have the power. Whereas the dollar has the backing of a government that is able to adjust that and change the distribution of it if greed gets out of hand and power corrupts. And
what happens when the government's greedy?
Well, then we have democracy to hold them accountable. We have the power of the vote and the power of the people. Unlike something like gold.
The Federal Reserve?
Unlike something like gold, where you only have the amount of power that you own. In democracy, everyone has their individual power is theoretically all equal to each other. Whereas with gold, it's just who has the most.
And in fact,
it's blowing my mind.
There's others too. Like, for instance, in the House, in the committee hearing, not actually debated on the floor, but in the committee hearing, there was one Democrat representative, her name escapes me right now. She said you know, I don't like your bill, but, and she was saying this to Dirk Deaton, who was the House handler for Bill Eigel's SB 100. And she said, but, you know, one thing I got to tell you, though, is the gold and silver has to be minted in the United States in order for it to be money. And Dirk kind of had a quizzical look on his face, and he goes, I'm not sure that's true. And she goes, no, that is true. And he goes, no, I think the Constitution pretty much says gold is gold is gold. Yeah. And she says, nope, it has to be minted in the United States for it to be money. And
she's just making it up?
What's that?
Is she just making it up?
I accused her of making it up, yes.
Just to say something, just to say something, just to, you know, just to disagree.
Well, she did offer an amendment when it was on the floor later. Now, remember, that was a committee hearing, and it was, I don't know, a month and a half later when it was actually on the floor of the House. And then she had an amendment. And the amendment stated that we wouldn't accept gold and silver as money in the state of Missouri unless it was minted in the United States. So clearly she did her homework and found out it wasn't in the Constitution.
Oh, yeah, she gave it away right there.
Kind of. But that's what we deal with, folks. I mean, this nonsense. And you would think that a state legislature would have a little more decorum, and that they would be a little more professional. But no, they're up to their old antics when basically there's a grassroots bill that literally thing as tyrannical as literally a digital dollar. The Democrats, I think, want the digital dollar and the tyranny that comes with it. They're okay with that. I am not. So people who want tyranny, take the digital dollar. Make sure that everyone else has another option, though, and that's gold and silver, and it's allowed in the Constitution. And that's something that our group has been working very hard on. And it's not just going up to Jeff City. It's, phone calls, emails, and actually getting a lot more people involved and showing them how to do it. What we can do is amazing. And in fact, I haven't even got into some of our other successes that are more local than that. One thing you got to pay attention to, folks, if you're getting involved in activism, is your local communities and your school districts. Pay attention to your schools. There's a lot of bad things going on there, and you can change it. And we're starting a program to do that right here in Missouri. And that's a grassroots program, by the way, not a government program.
I mean, you bring up one of the things that I think everybody is sort of itching to hear. I think everybody listening is totally on board. They are outraged about zombie apocalypse silver. I think they're starting to feel in their bones an inkling of possibility that a normal, non-elite type person can actually start influencing their local government, whether it's getting involved or just, showing up and doing what it takes to convince the representatives to, believe it or not, maybe actually represent them. You mentioned you're showing people how to do stuff. I mean, do you guys educate? Are there classes? Tell me about that. If people are starting to get all hyped up, what does that mean? How can we get involved?
That's a great question because it really stems and it starts from, and by the way, I'm a poor boy. The fact that I have a world map back here and a flag in Missouri, I spent my life savings. It's all gone now. So
it looks very distinguished.
It's thank you. So that way I can look somewhat professional. Maybe he knows what he's talking about. If you could see the other side's my bookshelf, with all my books and everything. So I'm smart. I look smart. But the fact of the matter is, you're absolutely right. Everyday people make a difference all the time. You won't hear about them in the news. You won't hear about, basically what they have done to make their community a better place because they're not interested in carrying those stories. Now, to your point, getting involved, it could be as simple as literally starting a social media group on Facebook. It could be that simple. And then before long, 4 years later, like us, you're this giant juggernaut with thousands of people, traipsing up to the Capitol and making phone calls and sending off emails and changing the direction of the politics of the state. And that's literally, something every single person can look at. And by the way, we're no one special. We don't have any celebrity. in our group or anything else like that. We're regular, everyday working stiffs that want change in our state, that want to keep our rights. So how do you get involved is actually very, very simple. Number one, this is what I would recommend, and I'm talking from my own personal experience, Basil. So, this is just me. Shut off the federal news. It doesn't apply to you. Nothing there is going to serve to do anything, but it just gets you emotionally upset, frustrated, have anxiety, and feeling of hopelessness. That's all you get. Oh
yeah, it can inspire a sense of despair focusing too much. And I'm talking as somebody who their profession is reading the news.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, in social media, you'll see that a lot. They get together and they have good ideas on how you fix the federal government. And the thing is, they will never be implemented. And so if you want to get around and just feel smart around your buddies, I guess you could do something like that. But if you really, truly want to make a change, start with your school district. That's actually quite easy to do. My wife and I have shut down 2 school bonds all by ourselves. No help. Well, the help came from the voters, really. But all we did is present an argument on social media on why these school bonds were a bad idea. And we did the math.
Bonds, B-O-N-D-S.
Correct. School bonds. So basically trying to get more money out of the people, out of their property. So, and you're in California, I think. Is that right?
I am hidden deep in an underground bunker somewhere in the western United States.
Okay, yes. Gotcha. Okay. I'm in Missouri. So Missouri all by itself is kind of an underground bunker. So we have similar situations.
I don't know. I'm starting to get pumped about Missouri, man.
Missouri is a special place. We have our problems, but we're exposing them, number one. And number two, we're actually fighting the good fight to make sure that we get to keep our rights. And we get our rights restored that have been taken away, too.
Yes.
But stopping a school bond is actually a really easy, simple thing to do. Yet people complain all the time about all the referendums in their school districts and their taxes going up as a direct result of this. But you can actually stop these from happening quite simply. It's all on our live streams. It's all on our channels. We offer that information quite freely. We talk about it. We educate people on individual school districts in the state of Missouri. Now, if you want to go bigger, from my experience, Facebook was where I pretty much started along with YouTube. But, Basil, I'm gonna tell you something that's gonna shock you here.
Tell me.
There's a little bit of censorship going on right now. Just a little bit. It's yeah, I know. I can tell by the look in your eyes, man.
That explains a lot. That actually explains a lot of things. Thank you for letting me know.
So our group, we're a bunch of legislative nerds, and we are getting censored so hard. We have like 70 subscribers on Rumble, and we're getting, many hundreds of videos or watch on our videos. In YouTube, we have over 1,000, and we're lucky to get 100 views on a video.
Right.
That's actually shadow banning. So the stuff that I'm talking about with you right now that we put up, YouTube doesn't like. I think we're really cool. I think we're kind of neat, and people find us friendly if they got to know us. But YouTube, for some reason, doesn't want people to know about us, and that happened with SEPA, the Second Amendment Preservation Act. That's when YouTube started messing with us. So you're dealing with censorship. I'm sorry, I'm getting back to my point here.
Yeah.
So you got to make sure that you're on platforms. You're starting a grassroots organization, right? So we're talking about the ingredients. For the recipe here. So you're going to need socials that don't actually censor. And that's really necessary for it as well, so you can actually grow your numbers. But also, too, there's nothing wrong with joining forces with an existing grassroots organization in your state and then following them around, learning from them. And that's what people do with us all the time. They work with us, and then they spin off and start their own grassroots organization. And by the way, that makes me really proud when that happens.
Yeah.
And I myself spun off from, a grassroots organization in the state of Missouri. Most people know me for my pro-life work because that's what I've been doing for 25 years. Some people don't even know I was involved in SEPA, and they just look at me, hey, you're the pro-life guy, in Southwest Missouri. Yeah, I'm that guy. I'm also apparently the gun guy or the gun rights guy. Now I'm the gold and silver guy. So I wear a lot of hats. But the organization is strong. It's very active. We're a very active group. We are not echo chamber folks. So we actually act on it during the legislative session. Plus, as you can see, during a governor's veto session, which is not during the normal session, we were shutting something down at the state level. Dean Plocker's evil, maniacal plan to put ESG AI software into the House of Representatives. So we're active enough that we're actually doing things when the session's not even in for the, the legislators. So that's kind of, basically what it takes to, free a state. And, we're different from everyone else because it's your own time and your own dime. There are no donations to our organization, and that's critical because there's a lot of people in the state of Missouri. I'm sorry, a lot of politicians in the state of Missouri that would love to tie us up in court to have us registered as lobbyists.
Yeah, it just gives you, it's like putting a target on your back.
Correct.
To be, some sort of lobbying organization. It ties you up with all sorts of regulation and reporting and stuff like that. But you're not, the idea would be you're not starting a grassroots, constitutional action group to make money.
Nope.
And it sounds like most of operations can simply be done in your free time on a Tuesday or a weekend.
Yep. And in fact, for some of our folks, they might only have a half an hour a week they can dedicate. But during that time, they can shoot out 5 emails and make a phone call, and every little bit helps.
And you've seen folks, you've heard during this story, he's got 70 followers on Rumble. Now, 1,000 on YouTube, that's not nothing. But, we're so sort of programmed at this point to believe that if somebody doesn't have a lot of Twitter followers, if somebody doesn't have, a bunch of YouTube followers, stuff like that, that they are more or less sort of impotent. Now, I will say, I'm looking at your Twitter, your X right now. You guys are doing pretty good. You're up there in, let's see, 5 figures, 20K followers. Pretty well done there. But that's the thing, folks. The moral of the story is the obstacles to actually enact some change that affects your personal life on a daily basis. It's not about working within this sort of monstrous ecosystem where, you've got to get the clicks and you've got to inspire people and get them to donate. And then only after years of sustained, now, of course, years of sustained effort is always a part of anything becoming successful. But you can start right now. There's that idea in your head that you're nobody, that nobody knows who you are, that your ideas are too fringe, that your whatever, your face isn't square enough or something. That's all just the programming that's specifically designed to keep you from getting involved.
That's right. And there's nothing a state legislator fears more than people they don't know in their district coming to visit them at their office at the Capitol. And it doesn't matter what state you're in. They literally they're downright curious. They will make time for you because they want to know why you're there.
Yeah.
Because they live in fear. So at any rate,
they want to get the information on who's coming and bothering them because who knows, maybe it's a threat.
Well, yes. Anything, basically, when you're holding your legislators' feet to the fire to do the right thing, to actually engage in, in this bill or that bill, which they normally wouldn't touch because the leadership, says, no, we're not dealing with those. Right. Suddenly you're asking them. And by the way, that's another great thing about Missouri. I visit a lot more than my senator and my rep in my state capital. I visit all of them. Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. We go visit with all of them. They all get equal treatment, equal love from us. Yeah. So that's another thing you can do when you're at your state capitol, talk to more than just your senator and your rep. Talk to others too. Talk to your adjacent districts, senators and reps.
Yeah, it's not just talking about the senator for your district. Or not just talking to the members of your party or the ones that align with you. They are all technically your representatives.
Yep.
So represent, folks.
And Baz, You're only using 1% of your power as a sovereign U.S. citizen when you're voting. You got so much more power to use. Phone calls, emails, and visits. Actually, you can use a lot more of your power.
Wow.
But contacting DC, you have no power there, none. And for the most part, I'm going to say about 95% of everyone in DC has been bought and sold so many times they don't even know who they answer to anymore. But it's not you. That much is certain. Unless you bring a $25,000 check to your representative or your senator in DC, they're not answering to you.
Which seems cheap, honestly.
I heard that 25 is not that much, but believe it or not, you can get some time with us. Well, hang on, not necessarily with a senator. You can get a time with rep for 25 Gs.
Right. I heard somebody say that for 10 grand you can get somebody's attention. I'm like, 10 grand? Why? Wow. I mean, the selling of one's soul and influence, everybody's feeling the inflation, apparently.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And
okay, so we're...
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, if you got something to say, I'm happy to hear it. I just want to make sure we stay on track for how people can... The practical steps for, people, like, if somebody's like, yes, I'm into it. I believe you. Okay, I'm pumped. Let's go. Mm-hmm. Like... How do they get started?
I'm just going to say from my personal experience, I've dealt with people in DC before too, and I assure you, unless you bring money with you when you go to visit them, you're not going to get anything done. You have no influence, and nothing. And by the way, you got to bring not just 25G for your representative. You got to bring 25G for a lot more representatives, to get their attention and to get them to vote the way you want, as opposed to in your state, where it's much, much more easily handled because these people live amongst us. Shoot, my rep just lives, about 14 miles away from me, my state rep. And so I could go and visit him at his house. My state senator is about 50 miles away from me, and I could go visit him at his house.
Now, somebody might assume that there's something illegal about visiting your state representative's house.
I call before I show up. So it's not like I just appear,
Right.
Civil. It's very civil. And I think.
Oh yeah, look at that. Okay, sorry. While you're doing this, I am simply just looking up who my representative is.
Yep.
And I'm on the website. It's got every bill he's ever sponsored. It's got his committees. It's got his basically resume, his career and personal, and it's got his address right here.
There you go.
Huh.
Yeah,
Interesting.
This is very public information. These are very reachable people, and I mean that in a positive way, because you need to be able to talk to your state reps. Because one thing I'm going to remind you, you may not have known this, Baz, because I'm about to blow your mind here.
Okay, I'm ready.
Politicians are the worst mind readers ever. They truly are. They have no idea what you're thinking. They're not going to know unless you communicate with them what you're thinking. And
I wasn't expecting you to say that, but it makes total sense now that you say it.
Because I think you're probably a better mind reader than a politician is.
I'd agree with that.
And so keep that in mind, folks. In fact, when we do legislative meet and greets, like I said, we do a lot more than just going to the Capitol and phone calling and emailing. We do legislative meet and greets where we schedule a time and rent a place and have the local rep and the local senator for that district come in and talk to the people. And I always do my little, funny thing at the beginning there. I put my hand to my forehead like this and I say, okay, Senator Moon, what am I thinking? And he'll say, what? I said, please concentrate. What am I thinking? I don't know. So then I'll ask the same thing of the rep, and they say, I don't know. And I said, I was thinking about cheesecake. You see, you guys can't read my thoughts. Right. So I have to communicate with you what I am thinking about legislation, because you don't know what I think about the legislation. So I do that, and they take it in good humor and everything. But the point is well taken. If you're not communicating with your rep and your senator, trust me, someone is probably who's bringing money is probably taking up their time. You need to be taking up their time. So lobbyists will be happy to take it, and fill in the void that you leave behind by not communicating. So once again, getting involved.
That's
involved.
an email, that's a phone call, that's a visit. That's easy, folks.
Yep.
Sit down, take 10 minutes, write an email, make a phone call.
Yep. And if there's a special cause in your state, you could rally a group behind that cause. A great one would be the Second Amendment Preservation Act, preserving the Second Amendment in your state, telling the federal government to go fly a kite when it comes to gun laws. Say, no, we'll take care of that here in the state. Thank you very much. We don't want your people in here. ATF, you're not welcome here.
Right.
It's really that simple. Gold and silver. Gold and silver is very, very important. Every state needs to be doing this. And I'm going to give you a heads up. How do you get involved? How can you get something done right now? Go to our website, mofree.org. Right on the front page is our gold and silver legislation that I got from Senator Eigel's office over a month ago. You guys download it and literally send a copy to your senator or your rep in your state and slam it down in front of them like you're Perry Mason and say, I want this in my state.
Yeah.
There's no problem with that. There's no copyright. When there's a good idea in a state, steal it and make it happen in your state. Equally be accepting when other states steal your good legislation that you have in your state.
There's probably like a bit of precedent setting
Sure.
that kind of means something to these legislators. I mean, hey, other people did it. There's a precedent for it. You can do it too.
Absolutely. There's many. I can think of 4 states right offhand right now that have gold and silver as legal tender in their laws. Utah, we have Arizona, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. So right away I came up with 4 states. There's probably more, but you need it in your state too if you don't have it. And there's other things you can do to actually promote gold and silver as legal tender in your state if you've already got legal tender. It's time to get a depository. If you don't have one of those, holy mackerel, that's like having a central bank right there in your own state. I mean, talk about power.
Now, just what is a repository? Like, what does that mean?
It's a giant safe for gold and silver that belongs to the state, the people's money.
Okay. So it'd be something like, your state gold repository that would,
yes.
Search for it. You can see if you have one.
Texas and Utah and now Tennessee. They're the only ones. I'm almost positive of that, Baz. I'm almost positive that's it. That's all you got.
Right.
And Tennessee just got theirs in 2023, by the way.
And this is just a piece of infrastructure that facilitates. Sorry, this cat is getting way too friendly with the camera. Get out of here. And that's just kind of a piece of financial infrastructure that is sort of required for the facilitation of gold and silver as currency.
It's not necessarily, and by the way, that's a great way of putting it, but it's not technically required because right now your state has reserves, but those reserves are held in the form of bonds.
Got it.
As opposed to just holding bonds, because bonds are the plus side of dollars, by the way. The dollar is a debt instrument, negative value.
Right.
So when you're holding a $1 bill, it's actually worth negative $1. The positive side is on the bond side. And so at any rate, so those bonds are being held by banks and by states in their reserves. Why not trade out some of those bonds for, a dollar that's hyperinflating into gold and silver, which is not, which is a stable currency. It's much more stable than, the dollar. Some would say that's insane. That's not as stable as the dollar. Well, actually, gold and silver have been the same price for 5,000 years. What fluctuates is its value in the dollar. So, that age-old story where, 2,000 years ago, you could get a nice toga, a belt, and some sandals for an ounce of gold. And now today you can buy a really nice suit, a pair of shoes, and a necktie and a belt, with an ounce of gold. It's the same thing over and over again. Gold and silver were meant to be money, and they always hold their value. The dollar doesn't. And in fact, if you look at, 1913 to today, in 1913, $100 was worth $100. Because of inflation, $100 is now worth $3 today.
Oh, yeah. Feels like it, don't it?
Yep, and don't forget nominal confusion. Baz, you probably got pretty good eyesight. When you get cataracts, man, it's really on a show. So I'm just throwing that out there right now.
No, thank you. I'll talk to my doctor.
I'm concerned about you, man. I'm concerned. So if I held up a $100 bill and I asked you what it's worth, what would you say?
I would probably say it's worth $100.
Yes, that's what most people say. But let's say I throw my cell phone up and say, how much is this worth? As the obvious questions, age, what is it, an iPhone or Google or whatever?
Yeah.
It's just, most people would say $300 or $400. Well, that's interesting because you're comparing the $100 bill to itself. But when I throw up my cell phone, you're comparing it to another asset, which is the dollar. That's what we call nominal confusion. It's because we associate a $100 bill with always being worth $100 is the reason we don't immediately recognize that it's constantly losing value because we're not comparing it to stuff.
Right.
So if you looked at a $100 bill and you said, well, that's worth 4 ounces of silver. Well, if you went back to 1913 and there was a $100 bill, that would be 50 ounces of silver.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So they got us confused, don't they? Nominal confusion. How much groceries could you get with $100? Just 20 years ago versus today.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's so striking. I mean, gold and silver, with the admission that the value of those things are sort of based on humans and our love of shiny things for the most part. But, it seems like if God were to make an object that would almost strictly have the usefulness of, trade or something, it seems like gold and silver are the obvious choices. Yep. And obviously, so did previous humans. And it's sort of, what's the word? It's unfortunate or whatever that the thing about it was that there was limited quantities. I mean, there can be a lot of it, but it's limited. And we got to a point where those who had all the money were running up against the limitation of matter existing in the universe. Yeah. And so all these financial shenanigans were sort of this strange, almost Tower of Babel-like scheme to kind of usurp even the concept of value, meaning, demand versus supply. And after sort of transcending the very idea of supply and demand, we've come to a point where value is almost like it's almost not even a specific. You can't even put a certain definition on it if you really think about it. Of course, there's a definition of value, but sort of philosophically, it can just mean whatever somebody wants it to mean. And the very act of moving into fractional reserve banking and all the shenanigans going on, I mean, it just seems like a really powerful, spell or some sort of illusion created to sort of usurp what seems to be the natural, God-given measure of value, being gold and silver. It feels very, of course, we know there's lots of occult concepts going on in our banking system. But, there comes a point where you actually feel in your bones just how much of an abomination our economic system has become.
Yes, it is. In fact, it's entirely wholesale unholy. That's how bad the financial system is now. And that's probably another podcast for another time, talking about the Federal Reserve System and what it's done to society. And you could break it down pretty easily. And actually explain the negative influence we've had in society. Everything is affected by it. And if we went back to gold and silver as money in the United States, not gold-backed dollars, because they can fractional reserve that, right? Gold and silver, and of course electronic versions of gold and silver, with no fractional reserve, then you would see how righteous a society could become really, really fast when you can't afford to go to war anytime you want anymore. When you can't, promise all kinds of money out of the Treasury, basically for retired people or for health benefits, you would see how quickly the price of health care would come down. The price of education would immediately plummet. The price of homes would come down immediately if you were on an honest money system that couldn't just be printed up.
Oppression and deception is an expensive business.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible.
But the state of Missouri is working on it.
I love it.
We are definitely going to be working very hard in 2024 about getting the gold and silver legislation across the finish line. We encourage other states to do the same thing. If you need a template, by the way, Baz, let's just throw, you're out in, I said California earlier. It could be Nevada.
Sure.
Okay, if you're in Nevada, and if you're going, okay, Pat, I'm game. I've been listening to you today. I think the gold and silver legal tender legislation is a real good idea. What do I do?
Take notes, folks. Take notes.
Yep.
Here's your notes.
Yep. So this is what you do. First of all, we have it right on our website, and it came directly from Senator Eigel's office. So go to Mo, M-O is in Missouri, mofree.org. Right on our front page is a PDF file that is actually our legislation for the state of Missouri for gold and silver legal tender. Now,
staring right at it.
Yep, there you go. It's got a lot. It's about 14 pages long because one of the things that we have to do is get rid of capital gains tax on gold and silver. We don't have sales tax on gold and silver, but we do have capital gains, or also known as income tax, on gold and silver. So we have to get rid of that, and that actually takes up about 8 pages of it, because the uniform code has to be changed for that. So, but at any rate, in there is a few other items, having to do with gold and silver. For instance, stating a value of gold and silver, defining what, gold and silver as money would be, as well as the concept of specie, which is outlined by the state of Utah. And specie is another way of saying a unit of exchange. It's based in gold and silver.
Got it.
And take this legislation, read through it, and make sure that this is something you want in your state. And by the way, you should want this in your state. And literally email it to your senator or your representative and say, this is what Missouri is doing. Convert this bill, for our state and submit it as a bill in our state. File this bill in our state. We want this too. Because we've already done a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So the legislation is right there to copy and paste, and it has to be rewritten because we have Missouri statutes in it. All you have to do is take out the Missouri statutes and insert your own state statutes, and your senator and your rep will know how to do that if you don't. And then
doing it, did it downloaded. I've got my email address of my representative. Mm-hmm. This is easy, folks. I'm doing it right now.
And then basically type up to your representative, if you're typing to him right now, it only takes a couple of lines. Dear Representative, blank, please read through this Missouri legislation and consider altering it for my state of blank, for our state of blank, or whatever.
Read through this. What should I call it? What's
say important gold and silver legal tender legislation.
Gold and silver. That's the thing
in
about
real time, folks. In real time, this is happening.
I'm telling you, if I can do it real time during a podcast, you can do this. Just do it right now. Don't even wait. Just do it while you're listening to this.
Yeah, but I imagine if you tell your representative you're watching him, he's taking you very seriously.
Are you watching, Mr. Representative? And the last part was you mentioned, tweak it or something?
Yep. So this very important gold and silver legal tender legislation for our state. Change it for our state, basically.
All right. For our state. Okay. There we go.
Yep. And then just sign your name to the bottom of it and say, also say, please let me know you got this. and call me at the following number. And by the way, I would recommend you actually have your senator or your rep call you. So put that in your email as well.
That seems like an amount of attention that I would never expect to actually.
I love talking to those guys. So I get calls from politicians all the time. So, and that's okay. I mean, even though I work a regular job and everything, oftentimes I'll be at a customer site and I'll say, excuse me, I've got Senator Eigel on the line, or, excuse me, Senator Moon's calling. I have to take his call.
Wow.
Like,
that's so fun.
Ooh.
With love.
There you go.
Your best buddy, Basil.
There you go.
There we go. Easy peasy. Mm-hmm. We'll see what comes of this.
Yep,
Keep everybody posted.
I'm gonna challenge you, Baz. Although I'm very impressed with what you've done so far.
Hey, look at me go.
One more to your senator.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, so let's find your state senator.
State senator. Yeah, I think I actually had him pulled up over here as well. Okay, here's the list. So we got U.S. House of Representatives. We got state senate.
No, your state. You'd be your state. State representative, senator. State senator.
Yeah, okay, I got him.
Okay.
Same thing?
Yep, same thing. You could just copy and paste from your
copy and paste,
box.
Baby.
Yep.
Let's go.
And just send them that PDF file, and let the good ideas start happening.
Oh yeah,
and it's that simple, folks. I mean, if you want, I can write up a much better detailed letter and put it on our website that you can use as a template when you're sending it to your rep or your senator. I'd be happy to do so.
I think that's a great idea. I would love to make some practical resources available to our people.
You bet.
And of course, any people that come to us in the future. I'm in it, man. This is it. I get it.
Yep.
It's so possible. It's so easy,
folks.
I just did it. I'm in VR, which means I have to type with my invisible little digits, invisible little digital fingers. And thank God that letter was short, or else this would have taken all day. But wonderful. Now, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So this is easy. We're just proving that it's easy. All you got to do is care and send an email. There's a good start. Mm-hmm. Now, what would you say to somebody who is sort of thinking about getting involved, and they're thinking about getting involved in a couple ways? This activism, man, they are motivated, they are appreciative, and now they're feeling a little silly because I did it before them, and I'm a clown on the internet. But between the sort of civilian activism, or maybe even looking for a way to get involved, like becoming some sort of representative, what does that look? What's the roadmap? Do you have a roadmap? Is this something you sort of help people with?
I don't. And by the way, that's another very good question. Actually, I do get asked that quite a bit. I personally have no aspirations to ever run for any office. I feel I could do a lot more good on the outside than I can do on the inside.
You're just the guy we're looking for.
Yep. So at any rate, but I do talk to people who want to run for office, and that's a lot of hard work depending on the office you're going for.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you asked that, because when it comes to, and I'm going to switch from state representative down to school board. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears on you, dude. But that is relatively easy to do because it takes no money to run for school board, really. So unless you're in Springfield, Missouri, where there's a PAC that raises $80,000 for you to get an elected position that pays $0, because school board members do not get paid money in the state of Missouri, and that's a state law, by the way.
Got it.
So if you want to, basically win an election, going from nowhere to state rep or state senator is kind of difficult to do. So consider winning an election locally. And school board is one of those ones where we need good people. Our schools are in a bad way. Another podcast, buddy. We could talk about Missouri schools because that's something we excel in and we have a lot of expertise in. And not only what's happening in Missouri schools, but legislation to guide the schools and how to get our schools out of trouble. We already have a plan to do that. But it takes good school board members that want local control of the schools. So the school's no longer controlled by the state or by the federal government or by the NEA, because these are the bad influences. This is how CRT gets in the school systems. I'm sure you've heard about that. Yeah. This is how SEL gets into the school districts. The transgender agenda gets into the school district through these filters. And the local people may not want that. But what they don't understand is they have no control over the school system anymore. The PTA that Dolly Parton was singing about ended really, truly in the very beginning 80s.
Really?
Yep, it's over. The PTA that we used to know, where the Parent-Teacher Association, where the parents were involved in choosing the curriculum, that's over. That's been over for many, many decades.
Oh, wow.
So if you want that control back locally, you're going to have to get school board members that want local control, because they've got to get you out of your state school board association. So you can stop taking those other influences. We have a plan to do that in Missouri, and we're going to be exposing that very soon with David Court, who is a really, really cool guy that actually came up with this plan and actually shows you how it works. There's only one school district in the state of Missouri that has gotten away from state and local control. And I'm sorry, from state and federal control and returned it to local control. Only one district out of 500 districts in Missouri. Important, folks. Your kids' education is very important. And by the way, if you can't change things in your school district, please consider, taking your kid out of the school. I mean, I hate to bring that up in the show. I know it wasn't supposed to be about that, but very, very important stuff. There's some bad things happening in the public schools.
Absolutely, yeah. We've at least been fretting about it privately here. Mm-hmm. I'm just real quick. I'm assuming it would be hard for me to run for school board if I don't have any children in the school.
That's not true at all. There's plenty of people that win school board in the state of Missouri that have no kids.
That's what I love to hear. Let's go.
So, being on a school board is very little work. I think in the state of Missouri anyway. Well, once again, I can't speak to other states.
Also
in Missouri,
love it.
It's 4 to 6 hours a month, and you get paid $0 though.
Yeah.
So that's it.
That's the kind of schedule I could manage for sure.
So it doesn't take much of your time, and you can affect positive change in your community immediately. But one thing you'll find out if you go through our videos and start combing through our live streams, we had Gretchen Garrity on recently, and we were talking about the Missouri School Board Handbook, which is actually a communist manifesto. Now, we're going to put a copy of it on our website in our forums, so people can actually, because this isn't for general distribution. It's real hard to get this, but we happen to get a copy of it. So we're going to expose it, and we're going to show you exactly what the Missouri School Board Association is like.
Oh, goodness.
But local control is what you want of your schools. And this is just as important as getting something done at the state level, because your kids' minds are at risk here. Especially during their formative years. The kind of stuff that they're trying to shuttle through the public school system concerns us greatly in the state of Missouri. And there are some people in Missouri that are fine with the school system the way it is, but they are the minority. So at any rate, that's something that we can work on.
I think that's a big thing for people to realize. It may feel like even your local politics is out of your control. And, it's one thing to be the crazy singular guy emailing, copy pasting acts from Missouri and sending it to your representative. I mean, that's all one thing. But I think what people are just kind of starting to wake up to is that there's a lot more people around you who agree with you or are at least as concerned as you are.
That's right. And the trick is not to form an echo chamber, to actually form an action committee, to actually get a grassroots movement. I hate to say movement because movements come and go, right? A grassroots revolution to make sure that your rights are not trampled upon by your state government, by your local government, and that your public schools are truly local. They're locally controlled. because the values of one community may not be the same as the values in another community in the state of Missouri. But it doesn't even matter at that point when the values are coming from the NEA, the National Education Association, which is basically a lobbyist group that's federal. And that's where the values come from for now to every school. That's why you get CRT in every school, SEL in every school, and I can keep going down the list. But you know what I'm talking about. And I don't know how much I could say without getting in trouble again on YouTube.
Sure.
But your kids' minds are very, very, very important. Please take action. If you can't take them out of your public school, fight to make sure that your public school is actually local in its values and not federal or state. Local.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I can feel the inspiration spreading across the world right now. And if you're not in the U.S., look, you just got a nice lesson into what's going on in the politics of the U.S., the accessible, important politics. Now, if you live in a country that, I don't know, is in Europe or something, I have no idea, but I'm assuming there's got to be a way for you to get involved over there.
The best way is to get a plane ticket and move to the United States, really.
There you go. Consider this your invitation.
And the show me state, that's what we are in Missouri. But I want to say, if you're in Missouri and if you're listening to this, and if you've never heard of Missouri Freedom Initiative or you've never been politically active, please consider going to our website and getting on our email list. We don't share your email. We don't sell it. We don't share it with anyone for any reason. But that is really, truly the best way to get information from the group. We have information about all of our local events that we do, as well as our live streams and our events up at the Capitol. Those are all contained within the emails. And that is the single best way to get involved in our group, is to just get on the email list. And once again, this is the power of our group, because we have enjoyed a little bit of censorship. So we didn't do email at first, Baz, but believe it or not, I was kind of against it. It became necessary after several, like Discord canceled our stamp, even Microsoft Outlook.com. Canceled our stamp.
Wow, that's a big one. Nice.
Yeah. And so the platforms we've been shoved off of. YouTube has shut us down twice, but brought us back up both times. We don't swear or anything. We're a bunch of legislative nerds, and we're talking about how to make our state better. But apparently we're a little too spicy for the YouTube gods.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they don't want anybody sort of realizing their power, as we've seen.
That's correct.
And look, folks, it's easy peasy. I just signed up for the newsletter. Let's go. Come on. No excuses. mofree.org. I'm sort of realizing there's an interesting, opportunity here, because, of course, we have listeners here to Canary Cry all around the world, all around the country, and I see you. We've got, of course, certain states that have more listeners than others, but it could be so easy to create a network of not only people in your state that you could coordinate with, but perhaps even connecting with little Canary Cry legislative action groups from state to state, sharing experiences, sharing support, maybe if there's some sort of email campaign or something. I could see this. If enough people get excited and get passionate enough to get involved, send us a little email. Let us know what you think about that idea.
Baz, that's a great idea, because honest to God, the solutions to fix our national problems are not going to come from D.C. They're going to come from the states. Every single time, over and over again, D.C. creates problems so they can create solutions, and those solutions create even deeper, worse problems. And this is the way they operate. This is how we always need politicians, right? We always need bigger government.
Of course.
So the states need to solve, and think of it, if you clean up the backyard in your state, and other states clean up their backyards. And if they join forces to clean up the federal government, that's essentially what the 10th Amendment allows for.
That's it. That's how it works. That's how the system was created. And just because we've been kept ignorant or despairing about it doesn't mean that it can't be better from here on forward.
Sure. And there's states, too, that have had great head starts. Tennessee comes to mind. Florida's done some great stuff, too.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you've been so generous with your time. I appreciate that very much. I did want to get a chance. You know, you had mentioned things like property rights and land ownership and stuff like that. Would you be able to give us just kind of an overview of what you're talking about here before you have to leave?
Absolutely. Okay. We talk about property rights and land ownership. We talk about something that the founding fathers even had said there would never be taxes on property, because then you can't own your property.
Right.
One of the problems we're dealing with in the state of Missouri is rising property values. Now, we're not at Illinois levels here.
Yeah.
But it's because the real estate keeps going up. And what goes up with that is taxes, which you can't get out of. Because, Baz, as you know, if you don't pay your property taxes, the government will come and take your property.
It's true, folks.
So you don't own your house. I call myself a homeowner all the time, but what I should be calling myself is a government leaser of property, because the government actually owns the land the house is on, and I can't just move my house. And I have to pay those property taxes on the land every single year. Otherwise, the sheriff will come at gunpoint and evict me from my own home.
Yeah, they'll take it away.
Yep. So the same thing is true of personal property tax for states that have them. We're unfortunately one of the 17 states that has personal property tax. And that means I get the luxury of paying basically sales tax on my vehicle every single year, year after year as well.
Mm-hmm.
So these are immoral taxes, and that's another thing that we're working on with the Missouri Freedom Initiative, is we're trying to get rid of, at first, personal property tax, because that's easier to get rid of, but it's not easy. Getting rid of a tax, it doesn't matter how conservative your state is, it's difficult to get done. Kudos to Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who got rid of capital gains tax on gold and silver in 2023 in Arkansas. Because it is not easy. It just isn't. Take it from a guy who's actually working in the. I'm not a politician, but I go up and work the legislature for good things, to happen in my state. And one of them is some kind of tax relief for the people of Missouri. So when it comes to property tax and personal property tax, they're immoral to begin with. So that's something that everyone needs to keep in mind when you vote in April, because a lot of states, school districts, will be voting on school bonds in April of 2024. It doesn't matter if you're in Missouri, you're in New Jersey, if you're in Oregon, a lot of states will have ballots in April. And remember this, because they're calling them a no tax bond increase issue. They claim your taxes don't go up. Let me explain this to you, Baz, real quick, because there's only one state in the entire country that has outlawed using those words on a ballot, and that's Texas.
Huh.
So your school claims your taxes won't go up, but we're going to borrow $120 million. But your taxes won't go up. What they're doing is they have a bond, an existing bond, that's about to expire. And when it expires, your property taxes go down. Instead of letting that expire and letting your taxes go down, they will extend that bond out for another 20 years. Your taxes don't go up, but you got another 20 years until you can actually bring your taxes back down.
Right.
That's a no tax increase bond issue. That's what it is on the ballot. Now, so at any rate, keep this in mind when it comes to property taxes and what we used to call allodial title for property. Gold and silver in the hand is yours. There's no third-party risk. You don't need the Federal Reserve to still be in business for that to still have value, like you do with the dollar that you have in your pocket.
Wow.
So keep in mind in April that when you're voting in, basically a school bond, find out if it's truly necessary to begin with. Usually they're not. But if it's truly necessary, maybe you have to vote it in. If it's not necessary, start gathering your forces to make sure that's voted down, because your county's going to raise taxes on you regardless. And then up with your taxes goes, more money to the school as well. They always get increases whenever your county raises taxes. So at any rate, so that's what I'm talking about with property taxes. And we need to find a way to get out of them. Those states that have personal property tax, really, we need to get out of it. But property tax needs to go away too. The most moral way of doing this, Baz, is moving everything to a consumption tax or a sales tax.
Yeah, right.
So, but taxing, for instance, taking away my land, if I don't pay my property taxes, even though I've paid off my house, I paid off everything. I paid off the bank. I own it. I got the pink slip. The bank says we owe nothing on this.
Truly
the government
evil.
still
It's just such an evil system.
Yes, it is. The government still owns your property, even when your house is paid off. So just don't pay your property taxes for 2 years. You'll find out real quick who actually owns your property.
See what happens, right?
Yep. And so at any rate, that's what I wanted to say. And I'd like to come back sometime soon and talk about the stuff we've done with schools before.
Would love to have you back, of course. That's incredible.
Public schools. And our group, the Missouri Freedom Initiative, more specifically, my wife, Retha, has uncovered a lot of financial shenanigans in school districts in the state of Missouri. In every single district she investigates the financing on, we're finding malfeasance, and yet they're not being audited at the state. So if it's happening in Missouri, it's happening in your town too, with your school district. Mm-hmm. And so at any rate, we'd like to come back another time and talk about some of that and the ways they play the shell game with financing in the public schools. And make sure that everyone understands your power is in your state. It always has been. It always will be. And they have lied to you by, literally telling you to put all your attention on D.C. There's no power there for you.
Yeah,
unless
it's almost
you're
like
$25,000.
It's almost like this country was founded on principles that would guarantee people's ability to, affect their own liberty and their own protections and things like that, just based on your participation in the system. Yep. Interesting how beneficial it is to a lot of people if we forget about that.
That's right.
All right, one last question here. Hypothetically, if somebody had been spending a few minutes looking at acreage for sale in Missouri and knew nothing about Missouri, I'm going to name some places. You tell me which sounds like the best buy. You ready?
Okay.
Okay, Richmond.
Not familiar enough with the area, Richmond.
Okay, Lebanon.
Lebanon, I would go to the outskirts, but Lebanon's okay.
Okay, outskirts of Lebanon. That one's on the list. We got Mountain View, Missouri.
Mountain View is absolutely beautiful.
Okay, there you go. Mountain View's on the list. Benton.
Actually, I've never been to Benton.
Okay, that's on the maybe then. That's on the maybe. Last one, Doniphan.
I haven't heard of that either.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It doesn't seem like it actually is a real place. That
sounds like a small town to me.
But you've helped my friend narrow down a few options, so thank you very much.
You bet.
Now, if only, that's a backup plan. If I'm not able to achieve the right things in my state through my new impassioned power to get involved with my state politics, Missouri's plan B. I'll see you there, buddy.
You bet. That'd be great. And I'll tell you what, if anyone wants to move to Missouri and if they're looking for areas and everything, I'll be happy to tell you, I would personally look for places with the lowest property taxes first.
Yeah, and that sounds like a good idea.
And so I live in a county that's got very high property taxes, unfortunately. It didn't when we first moved here. My wife and I moved here 27 years ago. It was reasonable back then. It is not reasonable now.
Okay. All right.
So that's why we're shutting down school bonds, by the way.
Yeah. That's a good way to help secure your resilience against property taxes.
Especially when the schools get 80% and they're asking bonds for things that are totally unnecessary. A field house, an athletic field house.
Yeah.
No,
right.
thank you. We're not going to pay $2.6 million for that.
Jeez Louise.
Yep. So, but I want to say just one thing. I am so honored to have been invited on your show. Thank you very much for having me. And I shudder to think how much you pay for eyeglasses or contact lenses.
Well, thank you very much for saying that. That's very sweet of you to say. And Patrick Holland, everybody, it's been such an honor to have you come on the show and really educate us about a lot of stuff that if we didn't care about before, we certainly care about now. And folks, no joke. Send an email, go to mofree.org, get on the mailing list, download the sample Missouri Act there to send off to your people. I did it live. It takes about 5 minutes to do from start to finish. And Patrick, definitely going to take you up on your offer to come back on the show, because I can tell there's so much more that we share in interests and passions, and every American listening now, whether you're in Missouri or not, these things are open to you. And Canarians, they're serious people, man. The Canary Cry listeners, the producers, they have been practicing the concept of taking responsibility for their own media and its survival against the onslaught of the advertising industry, the corporate takeover, deciding what media exists and what doesn't exist. Folks, the value for value model transfers to your local politics. It transfers to your state politics. If you're a producer of the show, you are already steps ahead in fostering the mindset that it takes to take responsibility for the government of your state. I mean, it's that simple. Self-governance, people. That's the value for value model in it manifest in other ways. So, Patrick Holland, thank you so much, my friend. If you'd like, feel free to plug any websites or video channels or anything like that, just in case anybody's interested in more.
You bet. The best thing to do is just go to our website. All of our socials are listed there. That's MoFree. Mo is in Missouri. MoFree.org. And there you generally get all the information you need about what we're doing. Getting on the email list, if you're in the state of Missouri, is critical. But if you're in another state and you want to be on the email list, I won't stop you from doing that. That way you can keep tabs on us so you can try to emulate what we're doing in your state. But certainly download that silver and gold legislation and hand it to your rep and your senator in your state. And by the way, you need at least 100 people doing it in each state.
Folks.
So don't think, someone lives in Florida and they watch this already. No. Wrong attitude. It's up to you personally. You do it. And
folks, there's thousands of you out there. There's thousands and thousands of people watching the videos, listening to the podcast. You're all there listening together. What if in every state in this beautiful nation, we have enough people tuning in right now? If everybody downloaded this and sent it to their representatives, all 50 states would now have hundreds
silver as
more. Yeah, but everybody's got to do it, and boom, we can make a serious difference in the fight for your country to recognize money as money. God's money can be our money. Are you listening to me? Are you not entertained, my friends? Listen to me. It is, if in some miracle everybody listening to my voice right now did this, it would make a huge difference. And if you don't think that it would, you don't get it. That's what this whole thing's been about, folks. So get involved, get pumped. Feel free to send me an email at canarycryradio@gmail.com. Let me know what you thought. Let me know where you are. Let's make something happen. And it's all possible because of our new good friend, Patrick Holland.
All right, God bless you, man. I really appreciate that. And you are absolutely right. There is only one competition, one competitor to the Federal Reserve, and that's gold and silver. So that's up to you, gang. If you think the dollar's doing a great job, and if you think the dollar's holding its value, then do nothing, because, that's exactly what they want you to do. If you feel that you need another option before the digital dollar comes out, if you feel that inflation is eating away at the value of your purchases daily, destroying your savings and taking your pension out, then you might want to consider doing some gold and silver legislation in your state.
Sounds like a plan to me. Gons is going to kill me for not bringing up Bitcoin, but that might be for another podcast.
Yep, gotcha. I'd be very happy to talk about Bitcoin as well.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll do that next time. All right, folks, thank you so much for listening, and make sure to tune in next time. But until then, think outside the cage.
So there you have it. There's the conversation between Basil and Patrick Holland of the Missouri Freedom Initiative. Lots of interesting things. I really am regretting not being able to have this conversation, because I had some questions regarding anonymity. Is it important to stay anonymous, or can you stay anonymous in this process of trying to ping your representatives with an idea or a sentiment that people have over an issue? And so that's something I was wondering about. But I think the biggest takeaway here is seeing how Patrick not just does content and creates a website and fosters a community to educate and to let his local community know what's going on and how to do things, but really it's the building relationships with his representatives that I thought was the highlight, or sort of the big takeaway, at least for me, because in our walk with Christ, part of our mission to spread the gospel, it doesn't happen by just a bullhorn or a documentary film. Those things help, but it's really the relationships you have with people in your life that make the biggest difference. So in that sense, politics should be no different, because the people that are in office should represent us. And that's how this whole system was created here in this country. So we should take advantage of it while we can. And one of the things I appreciated about this whole sentiment here, which I guess borders getting political in a sense with this podcast, we've never been political, but in terms of doing something that is in line with the Constitution and maybe pushing back on some things, what you can do in your local communities, it's a powerful piece of knowledge to have as Americans, and to practice and exercise those things where we can. And so I think that's important. But I thought it was interesting because it really reflects our economic model here at Canary Cry, the whole operation, value for value, which can be summarized as
value for value. We take no money from corporations, commies, or cartels.
Basically, the model here is value for value. If you listen to the show, you watch the show, you get some kind of value out of it, made you laugh, you had a deeper insight into a certain story going on out there, or just a deeper insight on certain issues, like, for example, today, and gold and silver and the Constitution, and how you can act in your local communities, then you give value back, and you can do it in the form of time, talent, or treasure. So time, you can volunteer your time to help us out in the back room here. There's lots of things going on. There are many ways you can contribute with your time. Really, it's up to you. Again, this is a parallel to this whole thing of being active in your local community politically, in a sense, because it's very similar. You just do your thing. You do your thing, and we will assist you in allowing you to do those things to help the show. But it's a reciprocal thing, value for value. So time, you can volunteer your time to do all kinds of stuff, timestamps, help out with Clips channel, and there's things going on in the back room always. With your talent, so art, music, clips, anything that's artistic in nature helps us build the visuals and the culture behind the community. We do memes. I love memes. I think we should do more memes, actually. And so this is a way to create culture behind the community, and also it should help more in the social media world. I don't know why it hasn't yet, but maybe in due time. And then also, of course, with your treasure, your financial support keeps the lights on here and helps us out. It's feeding my family, and of course, it's been a huge blessing to keep it going. But it's the thing that really tells us that we're doing what we're called to do. That's how we operate, value for value. You can go to canarycry.support to learn more.
Canarycry.support.
Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving, and we'll see you guys next week. But until then, think outside the cage.